Difficulty with that? Anybody has a problem, let me know.
Nope.
Okay.
All right, welcome. Welcome to you all, and how good it is to be together. This is the last of our series of 3, and we hope to pick it up again in October, so be watching for more information on that. Bob, would you like to do some tech?
Absolutely. It's very simple. We just ask that you keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. Um, and when we get to time later in our session for some conversation, I think we will stick with raising our hand. So we've got more than a few people here. And the way to do that is look for the React button on your Zoom toolbar and click on the words raise hand. That'll just put you in queue and we'll know who's ready to speak. That's all we got on the technical side.
All right.
Oh, Penny.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I should be able to get us launched.
Penny, you're amazing.
So thank you for joining us. For purposes of coherence tonight, here's a short review. Vespers emerged as a call from the Creation Spirituality Community's Cosmogenesis course, a desire to continue in some way. In working with the universe story, I felt a need to approach what we are learning from a deeper way of taking it in. And years ago, I read Ken Wilber and how he uses the term cosmos with a K. The differentiation of cosmos with the C and cosmos with the K is significant. The cosmos with the C refers to the physical universe, encompassing all that exists in the material world, stars, planets, galaxies, and laws of nature. For Wilbur, cosmos with the K includes the reality is not just a collection of physical objects, but a dynamic and multidimensional system, and captures the full spectrum of existence, integrating physical, mental, and spiritual into a unified whole. So Edwin Hubble, shook the science world back in 1929, just 95 years ago. He discovered that galaxies were moving away from us. And this set everything into reevaluation mode. So in less than 100 years, we have revised who and what we are, and we will continue to do so as the exploration and science allows us to deepen into it. Einstein's theology was profoundly impacted. Einstein went from seeing the cosmos as static to one that is dynamic. It helped him to see the universe as even more intricate and beautiful, governed by laws that reflect a deeper order and harmony. This Einstein felt was God. So that was week 1, we touched on that. And then week 2, we looked at the work of David Hinton and Wild Mind, Wild Earth. And what he talks about in this juicy quote, and I do recommend this book, Ancient Greek philosophy conjured a transcendental realm of pure idea that seemed more real and true than the empirical world around us. Because pure idea is changeless and therefore reliable, while wild earth is constantly changing and therefore unreliable. And this sets us up for the opposite of kinship. Tells us we are not wild, we are not earth. It tells us we are the noble human in strict opposition to the fundamentally other and lesser nature. This togetherness is a primordial value and more ancient even than self-awareness, let alone philosophizing. And so we were connected to each other profoundly, and we were also connected to other species. Amid first glimmers of human self-consciousness, Paleolithic hunter-gatherers assumed themselves kindred to wild earth, which was itself sacred. And here's the part that has been rattling around in my psyche. What a deep and unrecognized wound must lay open for us. Our Paleolithic kinship with the web of life torn so completely asunder, mind no longer wild and integral to earth. Unlike the Paleolithic cultures, our culture strips children of that kinship and leaves us bereft of our primordial togetherness. For it defines the very nature of what we assume ourselves to be, centers of a spirit identity, fundamentally separate from the world around us. So it's that wound that we don't even recognize anymore. And I remember well, as I'm sure some of you do, when Ronald Reagan was in and the idea of cocooning was highlighted, and that was pulling us more and more apart. So Thomas Berry calls us to this. We need a spirituality that emerges out of a reality deeper than ourselves. Spirituality that is as deep as the earth process itself. A spirituality born out of the solar system and even out of the heavens beyond the solar system. There in the stars is where the primordial elements take shape in both their physical and psychic aspects. Out of these elements, the solar system and the earth took shape, and out of the earth, ourselves. So we are called to begin to perceive ourselves in a completely new way. And during the month that we were between Vespers, I was listening to a telephone call that Robin Wall Kimmerer was on, and she just slid in this phrase, the two-eyed lens. So I went digging. What does she mean by that? And it comes from the Micmac people and an elder named Albert Marshall. And what it is the suggestion that we look at reality from two eyes, from the eyes of science and from the eyes of the indigenous people. Now, I believe that the word indigenous is really about all of us who have every part of us coming out of earth. And so we are indigenous to earth, regardless of how many times our ancestors moved and became other in a new culture. So, so this two-eyed lens has to do with, and I used it last week to talk about connection. And so we are so connected. And one of the real current ways that we can see this now is the research that comes out of science post-COVID. There is so much that tells us about our loneliness and our isolation. So that's looking at it from one way. But it's just as true when you go digging in the different cultures, including the Celts, including the Peruvian, including our Native American sisters and brothers. It's all grounded in that fundamental knowing deep inside that we are connected. And so for going forward, this idea of a two-eyed lens or two-eyed seeing really makes a lot of sense. It's like it's wisdom and knowledge, and we are all privy to it. So that kind of covers the opening remarks and where we are in our Vespers to this point. And with that, I'd like to invite Marianne to open us officially.
Thank you, Penny. Feel better. Yes, I have found a piece by Ilia Delio in her Hours of the Universe. And I'll follow it with a chant. And I'll put the words of the chant, which are very simple, into the chat. Awaken. Our universe is grand and wide. It stretches like gum ready to blow a bubble. A universe indifferent to life, yet the mother of all life. It doesn't know that it knows until we arrive. The we universe is the me universe and you universe. We are the conscious voice of the universe, but we are not all conscious of the universe voice within us. So we continue to stretch and fold and fight and forgive because the universe is not yet a universe. The many still search for the one. One day it shall be so, however, sometime ahead in the future. And then we will know the source from which we began, for the end is in the beginning.
Circle, beginning, ending. Circle, circle, beginning, ending.
Thank you so much, Marianne. So in the planning of Vespers 3, we extended an invitation to JD Stillwater to join us. It's been now about a year that we've known of JD at the Parliament. And then he's joined us on Global Kinship, and and he offers so much. And so it is in that spirit of so muchness to give us. We welcome JD.
Thank you, Penny. If my voice will cooperate, we can do this. It's great to be here. I'm usually all about the science, sharing discoveries and insights that move me. But kind of to be in keeping with the Vespers theme, I want to shape tonight's sharing around some poems and some stories. So if you're here for the hardcore science, you could visit my website, which is jdstillwater.earth. I am one of those people who are easily moved to tears when I'm considering something that feels profound to me. So I'd like to start with a poem about tears, and it's called Tidal Pools. Tears, like all prayers, trickle down to the sea, where they mingle with salted sorrows of ancient seasons. Each holy drop sanctifies the deep, and vice versa. Mutual immersion, a recompense, a communion. Tears, like all prayers, find their way home. Ann and I spent last weekend in rural Virginia, pretty far out into the boonies. There's a spiritual community that we've been part of for decades. And that community experienced some traumatic events in 2020, almost completely unrelated to the pandemic. And those events have fractured this otherwise loving spiritual community and has pitted people we love against one another. So we were there on this retreat to begin a process of healing and reconciliation, which we worked on all day, each day over the weekend. But then each evening we lit a campfire and sat around it watching for shooting stars under clear, dark skies. And it was the peak of the Perseid meteor showers. And we were rewarded with quite a few, one of which was particularly long and beautiful. The fire at the center of our circle, this fire of uncountable stars above us, and the fire of meteors burning across the sky, it filled me with awe, and I know it did for others who were there too. There's been a lot of recent research on the experience of awe generally, and awe happens when we perceive something that's vastly greater than ourselves, something bigger, more beautiful, more generous. Vastness can take many forms. In awe, we feel ourselves to be small and insignificant, but we also feel a strong sense of connection with that vastness and with those who are around us and the environment around us as well. Awe is deeply connective. And awe provokes the opposite of fight or flight reactions in our bodies. Our heartbeat slows, our faces soften. We become more altruistic, more generous. Sky gazing is good for communities that are in trauma and conflict. So there we are at this campfire in the mountains, staring into a clear summer sky, blazing with stars and meteor showers, hearts beating slower and stronger as awe enraptures us. And the reason our hearts beat at all is to keep oxygen supplied to our cells, carried there by the iron atoms that are enveloped deep in the hearts of hemoglobin molecules. Iron atoms which ride to Earth on these very same meteors streaking across the sky. Iron that we know was forged in the hearts of ancient stars, the generous ancestors of these same stars we marveled at around that campfire. So feeling all of this in the context of a community in conflict, well, it was magical. It was a sky-sized opening between the cosmic and the everyday. I want to hold on to this experience. I want to live inside the cosmic spirituality of everyday life. And sometimes I get to glimpse it. Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, is a typical Appalachian town, except there's a spring in the center of town there that emits large quantities of pure mineral-rich water all year round, and always at just about 74 degrees Fahrenheit. And people have long believed that water to be especially healthful, and you can take a bath in it or fill a jug from the taps that are there to take home. And all of this is in an open public park there in Berkeley Springs. There are a few rough, rocky basins, one of which claims that George Washington bathed in it once long ago. So here's a poem that came to me one spring while we were there, and it carries that theme of experiencing everyday happenings with a religious sensibility. It's called Wellsprings. In Berkeley Springs, west by God, Virginia, holy water gushes from the spout of a hill, so abundant there could never be enough infants to sprinkle, or sinners' fingertips to sanctify, or tongues to swallow reverently. So they bathe in it, splashing, greening the beckoning park, prophetic with cherry blossoms and redbuds resplendent in violet, lavender, magenta, and wine, all spring, and still it runneth over. Families baptize one another in shorts and tank tops and teasing laughter. Children splash in Crocs and flip-flops, haloed by light through noble trees. A few dandelions here and there for braiding into crowns. Endless streams of cars spill torrents of petitioners bearing casks, chalices, and canteens, sacred vessels of every color and design to fill and ferry home, to partake the abundant water of life and be anointed. Couples pilgrimage together from pool to pool, barefoot on the mossy grass, fingers and glances entwined, raptured as every couple ever, as if the fall from grace never happened. For this is grace abounding, bestowing, overflowing as every wellspring ever, forever bequeathing the very water of ancient ancestors, oceans, earth, and God herself, poured out like loaves and fishes without cease, provided eternally to the least of these, as if no other scripture is required. The thing about our new cosmic story is that oneness and connection are part and parcel of it all. Time, space, elements, atoms, people, it's all one event, and each part reflects the whole. It would be true to say there are no parts except as we arbitrarily define them, splintering off some piece of reality as if it can be considered in isolation. It can't, we can't, at least not meaningfully. I think the human world is undergoing what might properly be described as a phase transition, like water's transition from solid to liquid or from liquid to gas. Everything, it seems, is in turmoil as old ways break down and new ways begin to reveal themselves. And science, too, is in transition from a purely mechanistic worldview to one that includes the inherent wholeness of emergence, for example. We are finally connecting the dots between ancient supernova stars, iron meteorites that streak across the sky, and the blood flowing in our veins. And there are millions of ideas and efforts that gently urge us into this larger cultural shift, from a focus on separation and reduction towards a new way of embracing all of it, the splintering and the emergence, all at once, all together, this all-inclusive vision of ourselves as outgrowths of an ongoing and radiant whole. Religions, too, are gradually letting go of dualism and edging their theologies into a more grounded, more process-oriented holism. And this next poem is about all of that. It's called Transition. Our father's science reduces my selfhood to widgets, a model, a machine, idly ticking clockwork, pointless. Our mother's religion renders my body a shadow, a slut-shamed sleaze, a clay model, a precursor, discountable. Our daughter's science consecrates wholeness, first light made mortal meat, cosmic wind incarnate, alive. Our son's religion marries meat and mind, a sweaty, pungent monument, a galaxy, a destination, a symphony. Our grandchildren bathe in sunbeams, dichotomies, barely memories of ancient ancestors' primitivities, all space here, all time now, singly one, singly one. One sign of upheaval during a cultural phase transition is political chaos. So as we navigate yet another season of unhinged election insanity here in the untied states, I was thinking back to a reflection I wrote in January. I wrote it on January 21st of 2017, just after Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 45th president. I wrote, and this is a long quote, so everything I'm about to say is from 2017 until I say end quote. 5 minutes into my morning meditation on Friday, I became aware that my mouth was working furiously, mindlessly, all on its own. My tongue was on a self-assigned search and destroy mission to find and swallow every tiny scrap of breakfast still lurking between and behind my teeth. I am not a veteran meditator. Thoughts pass through like Oregon Trail wagons, some full of manure, some gold. As I got my tongue to settle down, I mused again about my mouth having an autopilot mode, so much like a cow's or a dog's hind leg when you scratch her belly. I felt myself to be very much an animal. Well, the next thought wagon to pass through brought a line from Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese. She writes, "You do not have to be good. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." The soft animal of my body. Young children I've asked are pretty insistent that we are not animals. Such is the early influence of myth and our language that perpetuates it. Of course, scientists have known for many years that we are animals, not only by biological definition, but also by direct kinship. 82% of my genes are traceable to your pet dog. And there's an 80% genetic overlap with those cud-chewing cattle cousins I was mindlessly imitating during Friday's meditation. The stories we tell ourselves profoundly affect our outlook. Here I was on the morning of a presidential inauguration, musing about the soft animal of my body, derailing my search for higher spiritual attainment. My next thought came like a revelation. I imagined billions of monkeys trying to manage a global technological civilization. Animals that scratch their armpits, bite their fingernails, lash out at each other. Animals that are sometimes completely out of control in the rut of mating season. Animals that can't even manage to still their own tongues for 5 minutes. We are Planet of the Apes. It's no wonder we take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. No wonder we get scared and lash out. Of course, we make stupid, short-sighted choices. I became filled with compassion for us. How can I have anything but patience, tenderness, and amusement for these poor creatures, these naked apes? We struggle so mightily to reconcile our instinct-driven mammalian nature with our highest aspirations for a global commonwealth of enlightenment and purpose. We get impatient with ourselves and each other because the story, the myth we tell ourselves is that we are civilized human beings, so we should know better. We should do a better job thinking 7 generations ahead. We should use evidence-based reasoning, should care more about this or that, should. Well, sitting in my chair Friday morning, imagining chimpanzees piloting bullet trains and sitting on the Security Council, all my political anxieties and frustrations kind of melted away. We are the rats that sign weapons control treaties. We are the millions of monkeys banging away on keyboards that actually did create the entire works of Shakespeare and Wikipedia and Mary Oliver's poem. We are the squid that fly to space, the hyenas that care for the helpless, the vulnerable, the homeless. We are the coyotes that vote. Let the compassionate story we tell ourselves be about animals that evolve and struggle and fail, zigzagging our way towards our own lofty aspirations. We are animals with soft animal bodies and some really hard animal instincts. Of course, we do embarrassing things in public. We're doing pretty darn well, considering. End quote. We're even making progress on healing from our racist history, especially in this country. So I want to end with a poem I wrote about and for a student of mine. For 18 years, I worked at a small Democratic school here in Harrisburg, where I got to work with every student every year as they grew, some of them from age 4 all the way to adulthood. It was a community and a family. And years after it was taken, I came across this old photo, and I'm going to share the photo. Yeah. This old photo of a student who is now an adult. And it's a picture of us together at an evening recital for the school's musicians. It was out on the lawn of the school under a tent. And finding the photo among my papers led to this poem that I've titled, You, My Child. And I share the poem and the photo with her permission. In the grainy old photo, the hazelnut satin of your cheek nestles softly, perfectly in the pink pale curve bridging my shoulder and face. The photo chuckles of how your body far outgrew the you in my mind, and I hold you like the much smaller child who still sleeps in my memory, easy, loosely, longingly. Oh, little sister, that longing aches as if I had birthed you myself, as if I could subdue all the monsters around and within and between us. And it marshals all my will not to squeeze you back into me for safety, for beauty, for a better time yet to come for us both. But you have parents of your own, and I have children of my own. And though I count you among them, those others are waiting for us, for my awakening, for your blossoming, for our grandchildren to hold the easy gaze of each other's eyes. My child, we are both children of Africa, here by two roads that diverged on a plain, each a bloody, trackless rut, each exacting awful tolls, each of us missing some essential pieces. But here, in this photograph, this moment of ease and comfort, the deserts are crossed, the seas are stilled, the shackles rust away, and we are whole once again. For one sleepy moment, a pregnant fullness moment, with a longing that remains. Is there time for one more? Can I do one more short one?
Absolutely.
I'll end with this poem that I call Assembling Goodness. Goodness enters us in tiny pieces while we sleep, as we walk, catching rain on our tongues, or snowflakes, or share a meal with new friends. Some assembly required. The alchemy of turning carbs to kindness, cells to celebration, moisture to morality requires a you or a me, whatever that is. Whatever that is, we needn't know to work the magic. It is child's play. So I understand it's tradition here to have some time of silence, and then we can converse about whatever comes up. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We generally will take 5 minutes in silence to absorb what we've been hearing. Thank you. Blessed be. And we have generally allowed time for open dialogue, conversation between any of us, all of us, responding perhaps to what the words of wisdom that JD has so generously been sharing with us. If you have a question or a comment, please again turn to your Zoom toolbar under the reactions button, click on raise hand, and I'll be happy to call on you in sequence. Oh, and let me note too at this moment, Leo has been very generously posting a number of links in the chat box. If you're interested in following up on any of those, take a note of those as well. Judy, I find myself curious. As you noted earlier, you're usually all about the science. But the words you've shared with us, the poems, I found quite touching.
Mm.
And I just wonder if there's anything you might share with us about that connection. We're hearing increasingly in popular press, we've often talked historically about the conflict between science and religion or science and philosophy. And thankfully, I've been seeing more and more people noting that diminishes how many. I saw a cartoon the other day that made a comment about, no, it wasn't a cartoon. It was a quote that might have been attributed to, it was attributed to someone that we all know and love. I forget if it was Einstein or someone else of that ilk, who said the closer and closer you get to the science, the more it opens your eyes and vision to a creator, to more than we are. Do you have any thoughts about that journey in your own life?
Oh, that would be a long response.
Don't mean to put you on the spot that way, but
I um, I have had several different worldviews in my adult life, um, and I don't expect that my current one will be the last, based on um, that history. It's probably not worth recounting the history here, except to say that at this point in my life, I am seeking integration as much as is possible. It's important to me that we not slice the world up. And when I say the world, I mean the cosmos with a K. Um, and for me, that doesn't. I agree with the quote that you heard, although words like spiritual and religious are slippery semantically, in that there are as many ways of understanding them as there are people. And so Einstein, I know, and I don't know if the quote was attributed to Einstein. A lot of quotes are attributed to Einstein that he never said. What was the quote I saw recently? Fake quotes will ruin the internet, said by Ben Franklin.
sure. Very, very true.
But Einstein was pretty clear in many of his speakings and writings that his spirituality, his sense of religiosity, was deeply connected with the awe that he experienced in exploring natural reality to the depth that he did. And that didn't necessarily imply anything other than natural reality. But when we talk about natural reality, especially like when Penny was opening, about cosmos with a K, I was thinking, well, the physical reality and the mental reality and the spiritual reality that is unique to each of us and also shared amongst all of us. For me, those are all part of they're different faces, different facets of an integrated reality that includes everything, that includes all of it. Um, so I try to resist that dividing up different parts of all of this. And of course, we have to live our lives. You know, it wouldn't work if we didn't have names for spoons that are separate from forks. But but to try and remain mindful that it's all part of one thing, one process, one evolving reality. And Gail's had her hand up for a while, so I'm going to demur about the rest of your question. And
I see that. Well, no, that was very, very helpful. Thank you. Gail.
Well, thank you. I was listening. So okay. Well, I want to thank you for your poems. Enjoy I found very meaningful taking the bits of science and then running it through our humanness. And the last one you talked about something becoming morality, that one just kind of like blew my bean because it wasn't even body parts anymore. It was action. And I thought that was particularly profound and others that preceded that in the poem. So the question is, how do those moments come to you? Are you doing science and the science inspires you? Is it the other way? Are you sitting at the breakfast table with a knife and the fork and suddenly you're taken over with this meaning and awe?
sometimes it happens when I'm eating breakfast or whatever, but most often it's from studying the science, and because I have a monthly science news newsletter, I try to stay abreast of the science news. I read Scientific American cover to cover every month.
Yeah.
And very often it comes out of the science, this moment of aha, because I'm a real generalist when it comes to science. I haven't had to zero in on some very narrow slice of reality in order to defend a dissertation. I'm much more interested in how it all fits together and how the different fields of science interact and overlap with one another. And those overlapping points are just so rich and full of profound revelations that scientists take for granted, but the average person, it's a real revelation. It's an aha moment. And so when I have that aha moment, oftentimes I'll write it down, and sometimes as I'm waking up in the morning, I'll have words. Words will come out of my subconscious that strike me in some emotional way, and I'll think, I've got to write this down. I think there's either a poem or a sermon in it.
Mhm.
Have I answered your whole question? I feel like there was another part.
Yeah, I just wanted to, yes. The other part that I think about the school, you had a school, I think you and your wife were really part of putting that school together. Is that right? No.
No, I was not one of the founders. I came along after the school had been around almost 20 years. And it is still going, though I'm no longer part of it. So
So was that a kind of education, a way of teaching that you felt into the community of teaching a certain way that began to affect and lead you in certain directions for this work that you're doing now?
probably to some extent, but this work started pretty much on its own. And for many years, it was a sort of a part-time mission to put these thoughts together. And I began speaking in churches, about 12 years ago. And that has just grown and grown. And that's a big part of the reason why I left the school, because this work was occupying more and more of my attention. So,
Thank you.
Interesting.
but
Thank you.
but you touched on the everyday spirituality part.
Yeah.
But another time when it happens is listening to music. Oftentimes there'll be a line, a lyric in a song that especially started with Peter Mayer's songs. Does anybody know Peter Mayer? Familiar with his music? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of this kind of science and spirituality stuff shows up in his music. Another one is it'll come to me. She's a Mennonite folk singer, Carrie Newcomer. Thank you.
Oh.
Carrie Newcomer has a lot of this, experiencing. She talks about folding laundry like folding hands in prayer, and just living every moment mindfully and with a deeper sense of purpose, rather than a sense of I'm folding the laundry again kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's great. Beautiful. Thank you. Judith.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. JD, thank you so much. I'm just sitting here, my whole body is tingling, my breath is slowed down. I just feel that I've been sitting in this beautiful, storied space. The word that comes to mind is just interweaving. This interweaving, this lovely kind of two ways of seeing science and poetry. I'm totally committed in my life to being a poet and living in a poetic universe, which
Yeah.
has taken me into a deeper sense of the sacredness and holiness of the universe. So I'm sitting here in this poetic space, but I'm conscious that there are a number of scientists who are moving, who are actually poets.
Mm.
The kind of the science that I've been reading and immersing in the last couple of years has certainly taken me into that kind of poetic space. And I'm conscious of people like Thomas Berry saying that it's the poets and the artists who are kind of bringing us back to this sort of rapport that we share, these mutualities that we share as human and other than human, science and religion and so on. And Brian Swim also talks about the necessity of poetry, in cosmology. So I feel like I've been in this kind of narrative, this Heidegger who said that language is the house of being. And the language that you're using is just so, so healing. It's so crossing boundaries. It's so bringing us into the experience of oneness. And it's that we're language making mammals. And we have to find the new language, which is expressing the insights of science. And to me, it's poetic language, which primarily is really bringing me into this deeper place of wisdom and insight and experience. I can't thank you enough for that beautiful story and that beautiful photograph
Mm.
of that young girl and the way you spoke about that. I just kind of feel like you've invited us into this deeper embrace and this really powerful and beautiful healing space. And primarily through poetic language, storytelling, this depth of feeling and sensuality. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for that affirmation. I I experienced that feeling reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She uses poetic language, and she uses the deepest threads of her tradition, literal threads of her indigenous tradition, but weaves them in with the science. And
Yeah.
this is a difficult time for scientists. They tell me that the way the funding works now and the way that publishing scientific papers is in as much of an upheaval as publishing any other kind of book. And so it's difficult for scientists to speak in poetic metaphor, and certainly it's difficult for them to use what might be construed as religious or spiritual languaging, because it threatens their careers, their career arc. So there's a need for people like me to do some of that translating.
Yes. Do you know the work of Maria Popova?
Of course,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
absolutely. Another one doing
Yes.
work. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thanks
Thanks,
for your thoughts
Judith.
on it.
Thanks. Marianne.
I have two things to say. One is just a big thank you. As you were reading, I I think you're in Virginia, right?
No, I'm in Pennsylvania now, Harry.
Oh, because you went to Virginia to be with that community. I'm
That's
in Virginia, but
Uh-huh.
it's sort of a new, well, 3 years still feels new. And it was just very nice to feel what you were describing, especially in the poem, watching when you were talking about the Perseid and the fire, and it was just really sweet. And thank you. But the other thing I wanted to share, as you were talking about finding meaning, finding depth, finding oneness in the ordinary, a long time ago, a friend told me, women have prayed that way all the time. As we do the dishes, as we fold the clothes, as we mop the floor. And I think now the lines are blurring, more. But I just wanted to share that. Thank
Well,
you,
and Buddhism has contributed so much to that trend, that pattern, that thread of change. So yeah, you've had this wonderful spiritual experience. Now go mop the floor with the same spirituality. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think Bob may have stepped away. Barbara, I think it's fine for you to just go ahead.
Okay, well, greetings all. Sorry I'm in the dark, but I'm outside on the coast of Maine. So I'm feeling like I'm in a very peaceful, tranquil, beautiful spot. And I missed the first two gatherings, but I was on the last call or the time JD you presented whenever it was. Somehow I'm a little confused how all the links in my life are crossing over and making sense. Because first of all, you opened up talking about awe, which is something that has been very prevalent in my life for years. And I feel very fortunate. And I think it's due to a lot of reasons, but that was just really nice to hear. And then when you said Carrie Newcomer, you just like opened the door to like the end of the earth for me, because she is prophetic. I mean, she's amazing as Parker Palmer, as Ariel Berger. There's so many good people out there, and it's nice to hear other people lifting them up. And I think that also Maria Popover, who was just mentioned, it's kind of like, why aren't all these people coming together in the Coliseum? And I'm or the other place too, and I think you and I chatted, or I mentioned this before, a service space with Nippon is just like an amazing organization. And Valerie Carr, Revolutionary Love. I mean, we could go down the list of all the strong people whose voices are not being heard by enough people.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's one of the rabbit holes that I go down when I come to one of these gatherings, because I think there are pockets out there in the universe where a lot of things are coming together. I think it's a very slow process. I think we are definitely in chaos. And it's just a question of where the chaos is going to play out and where communities are going to build from the bottom up. It's not going to come from the top down. And I think there's some out there, but there's so much work that needs to be done. And I don't mean to be, like a doomsdayer, because I've also been reading Brian McLaren's book, Life After Doom. And I feel like there's a lot of, like I feel like this call is just another thing that's surging all the things that are out there, and then it's a question of which where do I put my deepest roots? I mean, I feel like I'm living them, but it's in a small way. But sometimes small is how things start too. And I think everyone here is doing or involved in some way with the creation spirituality idea of the universe all being connected and We're part of the cosmic story. And, you know, I feel really blessed to be here. And
Mhm.
yet I feel like there's so many people that need to wake up. But, it is a process. And, it's taken me 68 years to do it. It's not like I was born this way. Some people
Don't
have
think
better
any of us
beginnings
were.
where they're there from the moment they start. This we know.
Yeah.
Sorry you're letting me rattle, but I've been sort of off in the woods all day, so I'm like, whoa, that things are alive.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, thank you for listening.
it's a good thing to be lost in the woods for most of a day.
Yes, yes, it's very healing.
You know, one of the things that has come out of recent research on this experience of awe is that there are people, I forget what the percentage is, like 20 or 30% of the population that they're called dispositionally awe prone. People
I haven't
who
heard that term.
they're people who are dispositionally, constitutionally more likely to experience awe in any given situation.
But
And
it, hmm.
and those people experience more what they call eudaimonia, the deep, meaningful purposefulness in their lives. And
I will just add
awe is
to,
part of that.
well, I appreciate sort of that. I'm going to have to go down that rabbit hole because I think partly for me, and this is honest, like from my heart, I was an early childhood educator. I started out in high school and with very challenging students that were like, could have been my brother or sister. And then I worked my way down to early childhood, and there was the magic.
Mm.
And to this day, I still feel that anytime I see a child 8 years or younger, I mean, any child, but there's something about watching and with my own boys. That was the most magical time in life when they were home playing in the dirt, digging in the garden and just kind of experiencing nature. And then some people it stays with and some people it doesn't.
You've just reminded me of the other part of Gail's question that I didn't get to. And Gail,
Oh,
you asked, was it a particular kind of educational model or philosophy? And yes, it's this. Sometimes it's called Sudbury model schooling, schools that are more or less loosely modeled after the Sudbury Valley School in Framingham, Massachusetts. And
I'm a little familiar with that. And then uh yeah, there's I was fortunate my kids went to a progressive school and I was trained as an educator, but what I learned from being in a progressive school was more than I learned to be an educator. So, there we go. Let's like, how many doors can we open here?
Well, the Sudbury School's right down the street for me, I guess,
Oh,
because
very cool.
I'm in around Boston. But so what was that? I mean, what is there's a Rudolph Steiner School, the Montessori. Can you give us? I guess. Okay, I too, work with kids and have worked with kids. So that is such a strong mindset that you have to have because you're bringing it out of young ones and with responsibility. So I was just wondering how that, what that, if you can describe it in kind of I'm sure you had some little mission statements or something. How, what kind of school was
yeah,
it?
it's been more than 2 years, and so I've lost my elevator speech.
Okay,
But but I would say that that model starts with the recognition that children are people, and they've been endowed by billions of years of evolution to 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 learn whatever they need to learn to thrive in their environs, their community. And so the children of indigenous people, including our indigenous ancestors, they learned by being immersed in a community of adults which are just living their lives. And so
Mm-hmm.
kids show up at these schools and they just live their lives. No adult is telling them you should learn this or you should learn that, or isn't it time you started
oh,
learning this other thing? Um, because we can't predict what the children of today are going to need as they enter their adulthood 20 years from now. The adults who were trying to do that when I was a child decided that new math was really what was needed. And the reality is that for people my age, I just turned 60, People my age really needed to learn how to type as early as possible. And it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. We learned new math instead. So, and now I'm off into my critiques of our educational system, which isn't what we're about tonight. But kids have an innate drive to thrive, to reach for the best that they can be in their lives. And when we short circuit that intuitive drive of theirs, that innate drive, yeah, they'll learn math on our schedule, they'll learn to read on our schedule, but it shuts down that magic and excitement that Barbara was just talking about. And you can see it happen between around kindergarten and middle school. Kids begin to take on this idea that learning is a chore. Learning is something that other people want me to do rather than something that I do because I'm fascinated with exploring my world. So these schools are built on that principle. We don't try to, I say we, I'm not there anymore. But probably the best thing is to just look up Sudbury model schools and
Thank you.
you'll find a lot.
Well, thank you.
It's not perfect. Let me say it's not perfect.
Yeah, good. Good. Well, you spoke a lot about children actually and development and the humanness, how we become adult humans and what we bring from our childhood and what we lose. So thank you for giving me that framework a bit of where you've been, how you've been working with our emerging adults. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Patty, yes, go unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. That your discussion reminds me of a picture that I saw. I might have been on Facebook because I haven't been on Facebook in like 3 or 4 weeks, and I saw this poster, and it says answering the question of how can I encourage my child to read books instead of screen time, and the answer was they listen to what they see, not what you say.
Right.
And it has a picture of a woman sitting in a train station or something, and she has a child on her lap, and the child is reading a book, and her arm is stretched out, and she's reading a book.
Mhm.
And if I'm a reader, my child is going to want to learn how to read because they want to do what I can do. They want to be just like me, no better, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and do more. I can do that. I can do that, you know. And it's really what they perceive they need to do, as you said, JD, you know, and of course, a little bit of inspired enrichment doesn't hurt.
Right.
But it's really they will watch what their parents do, what their caregivers do.
Yep.
They are amazing at analyzing actual behavior.
That's right. Yep.
They're unforgiving also. They're very, very my experience, I taught second grade for a couple of years. They're very perceptive and they're completely unforgiving. They're like absolutely accurate. No, like toning it
Filters.
or anything like that. They'll just zing you.
And they have very acute fairness detectors.
Oh yes. Oh
And
yes.
if it's unfair, they'll tell you.
Oh yes. Yeah, the second grade used to sing out, and they were allowed to sing out, Mrs. McGrath made a mistake. At which point, if I said the wrong homework or something like that, oh, they would raise their hand. Mrs. McGrath made a mistake, and then the whole class would sing together, Mrs. McGrath made a mistake, because 7-year-olds are also very afraid of making mistakes in class. So this was to like get over that taboo also because I could make mistakes. And then I had to break out the pretzels because I had a big supply of those tall pretzels. Everybody in the class got a big pretzel every time I screwed up. Okay.
That's great.
But they watch. They're paying attention.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks so much, Patty.
Thank you.
So, Um, Seeing no further hands raised at the moment, JD, I wonder if there's a few words you wanted to say just as a wrap up or a reflection on tonight's conversation, and then I know Gail has a closing chant for us.
I'm just really honored to be here, and I, th- I think good things are happening in the world. That shift is beginning to happen, and in evolution, there's this term punctuated equilibrium. For decades, evolutionists thought that things always happen very gradually, and then the fossil record just didn't show that. Things go gradually, and then there's a sudden things can change very rapidly. And I think culturally we are approaching that point. I think in some ways we have to. I mean, things are at a point where something has to give. And so smart and thoughtful and compassionate people are working on what the new way will look like. And all the people on this call are part of that in small and big ways. So keep doing it, and let's keep conversing with each other until we get there.
Beautiful. Thank you. We shall. Gail.
All right. The JD's theme and the one we've heard so many places that as we are experiencing the coming together of humanity as in that slow but perhaps punctuated way. I brought to mind the Hindu chant of Om, which for the Hindu in their origin story, the whole cosmos began with the sound Om. And so when people chant Om, they are reconstituting the universe, the cosmos. They're bringing it back. And I took some reflection on that, which is I also got inspired from a man whose name I'm not forgetting. Well, never mind. Ron. I didn't expect to talk about him, but here he started coming out of my mouth. So hi, Ron. I know he's passed now. So that all the names of God for all religions, say 90% of them all have the elongated vowel of ah. Okay, so we talk about even God or Yahweh or Allah or Pachamama. There's lots of A's there. We have many, and one way as we find our religions kind of getting crinkly and kind of losing kind of bulk, but somehow creating a more enlivened kind of consciousness. That is where we are right now, as the East meets the West and the West meets the East and the Middle East, and we're all learning from each other. That it is maybe a time also when we bring ourselves back spiritually by bringing back together that sound of Om. So what I'm going to ask you to do is maybe Bob, you can put that the first slide up on the screen. There is the image of Om. And usually this image is shown when people chant the chant. And on the next slide is different names of the divine that I have collected here and there. Yeah. Allah, Deva, Wankantaka, God, Gaia, Yeshua, that's Jesus in Hebrew. Okay, Shanti, Rama, Adonai. That when you see the word the I is a diphthong. So if you have an I there, it's really Ai. So Adonai, Pachamama, I mentioned before. That's Quechua. Kanaloa, that's Hawaiian for ocean, and Krishna, which is Hindu. Now, those are just some of them. And I thought you might take one that you know already, that is a familiar to you as a name for the divine that you've lived with most of your life, and then also one that you don't know. And put them in your mind. And what we're going to do is we're going to play about 3 or 4 minutes of Om. And have our mutes on because music doesn't work over Zoom. And so, each of us can chant that name, Yeshua. Just sing it until you run out of breath. Take a breath, sing it again, and you'll match the pitch of the sound that you're hearing from the computer. And then, if you don't want to do that, you can also just hum. If you're not so comfortable with that, you can just hum and find your vibration fitting the vibration that you're getting that's coming towards you. The pitch is kind of, as I've noticed, I was looking for this piece, the pitch goes up and down a little bit, but it's basically in the same range. And so what we're going to do in our minds and our imaginations is we're going to sing the divine back together into oneness for this particular moment of 3 minutes. And so if you'll hold that possibility in your mind as you go ahead and chant at the same time, we probably could be aware of each other, where we are, and imagine how wide a net of oneness we're going to create with this activity. All right, so thank you, Bob. And put yourselves on mute or else you'll interrupt each other. Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of Penny, who unfortunately did have to leave our presence a little while ago, I want to thank everyone deeply for being here this evening. And as she mentioned, we intend to pick this back up again in the fall. I think we're looking at October. So watch for that announcement. And otherwise, have a marvelous rest of the weekend. Reflecting. Oh, yes, Marianne.
I just wanted to remind folks, if you're not aware, creation spirituality communities is the umbrella over a whole lot of events, many events. The first Sunday of every month, there's a worship experience, which is based on the four paths, totally interdenominational, non-denominational. I don't know which billing y'all would prefer. So there's that. There's Cosmic Vespers, you know about. There's Global Kinship, which is in about its third incarnation and has been running for about 5 years, I believe, Gail.
That's right.
The first Thursday of every month. Stop me, everybody, if I get it wrong. We are offering electives this fall. And in September, on Monday evenings, we have one that's in the chat, Theodore Richards. And it's going to be about, it sounds just awful, but it sounds just wonderful. It's like the apocalypse, but it's creating the new humanity. I think it goes like this with the gathering we had recently. In October, Kaleo and Elise will be offering Qigong and haiku writing. So the September one with Theodore Richards is on Monday evenings. In October, Kaleo and Elise are on Thursday evenings, 3 Thursdays in a row. And we've got more in the wings. They're just not pinned down yet. What am I forgetting? There must be more. Oh, and so in January, we'll start the certification courses again. So there's a lot going on, and we've got members who are also offering lots, and you might be one of them. You want to offer with us or for us. So I hope to see you in some of those venues. Great seeing you all again. Steve, it's been a while.
And Leo, again, if you're still with us, thank you so much for all you were contributing to the chat. I'm sure those resources will be meaningful and helpful to a number of folks.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You can save all those resources in the little 3 dots in the corner of the chat window. You save the whole thing and look at it later.
It's a nice
Ah,
addition, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Ah,
On my
Wow.
screen, it's the upper right corner and it says more, then save chat. It saves it
chat.
in some folder on your computer you may have to go searching for, but it's,
yeah, mine isn't showing that. I'll have to dig into that.
There's the chat folder on your main
Yeah,
drive.
yeah, I know it'll save it there for when we're done. Okay,
Hey,
I think I can stop the recording.
yeah.
And